Greetings, MacNNers. It's time yet again. What? Another week already? Yes, it's time for episode 66 of the MacNN podcast. Welcome back, MacNNers. Always a pleasure to have you with us. I'm Charles Martin, the editor of MacNN, and as usual, over there on the other end of the country is managing editor Mike.
Hello, everybody.
Man, you're going to be hearing this after the WWDC keynote, and I'm tempted to not even talk about it because anything we say now is going to be different than what actually comes out. But there are so many rumors around about it that I thought we'd go through some of them anyway, and we'll offer our thoughts on it. But of course, anything could happen. That's the beauty of it all. The main one that I'm interested in personally is the redesigned MacBook Pro, which we think will be announced maybe at the keynote or maybe afterwards. We're not sure. The MacBook Pro is overdue for an update, and so we think it's going to get one. Here's the interesting dilemma, though. The latest rumor on the latest MacBook Pro is that the design will change somewhat. It'll still be a unibody aluminum design, but it will now only have, if the rumors are true, 4 USB-C / Thunderbolt 3 ports. There's no MagSafe. There's no headphone jack. It may, in fact, be the first Apple product with no headphone jack. This, though, puts Apple's Pro product even further into the shade. And by this, I mean the Mac Pro, right? It's either, if this comes out the way the rumors are talking about, with an OLED strip at the top that conforms as a contextual function key bar and can do other things, if it's got all the latest full of everything and super fast and all this stuff, this puts the Mac Pro even further into the shade. And it means that either Apple has to update the Mac Pro real soon, as I want them to, or it's dead.
The Mac Pro's dead. I don't think we're going to see another one. I don't think that they sell enough to justify it, and I don't think that they care. I think that the mobilification of Apple is effectively complete. Mm-hmm. We have seen maybe a 13-inch size MacBook Pro aluminum case, and I'm not convinced there's going to be a 15-inch one.
Wow. Not even a 15. Holy cow.
And in regards to the 4 ports, I'm looking at my computer right now, and while I do have a USB hub underneath my desk, I have 3 cables coming out of it right now. I have the cable to the USB hub, I've got my blue Snowball microphone, and my MagSafe, and that is all.
Yeah, my setup at home is a little bit different, but yes, essentially you're right. These machines are meant to be mobile machines, and you don't carry around a huge number of dongles and such with you, wires and all that, with you when you travel. You might have a hard drive. That would actually be sensible, so you can continue to do time machine backups or whatever kind of backups. But really, the whole idea is that the machine is mobile, so it's not anchored down by a bunch of wires sticking out.
When the original MacBook, the 2015 version that is, shipped, there was no way for them to have a second USB-C port and alternate charging.
Right.
The control chipsets did not exist at the time, and they existed a little bit later when the Pixel came out with 2 USB-C ports.
Right.
I would suspect that these ports are all Thunderbolt 3 ports, which contains USB-C 3.1.
Right.
But I'm not positive on that. It would be kind of strange for them to say, okay, well, these ports are all identical, but these 2 are Thunderbolt and these 2 are USB-C.
Yeah.
That's, from a user standpoint, that's a little awkward. There's no reason why there can't be the 4 Thunderbolt ports. And given that they're the USB-C size, they would have to be Thunderbolt 3, not some kind of provisional Thunderbolt 2.5 or something like that, like they did with USB-C.
Oh, God. Let's hope not. I want to agree with you, but Apple has this history of not giving users all the ports they want.
Okay, let's back up on that. They have a history of not giving a vocal minority of users the ports that they want.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that I don't want these ports. I do. But you and I and most of our readership are not Apple's target market.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. Even the MacBook Pro is bound to be going with USB-C. That much we know, and there, or at least that port connector. And we hope all 4 of those ports, assuming there are 4 again, are Thunderbolt 3 that can also double up as USB-C. It would just be like Apple, though, to cheap out on 2 of the ports and just make them USB-C 3.1 only.
Again, that's possible, but from a user experience standpoint, that'd just be nasty.
Yeah. Unless they're on the other side, you'd never know for sure. And, it's just complicated. And believe me, there's going to be much wailing and gnashing of teeth about the loss of MagSafe again and all that sort of thing. So
I'd like to reiterate that Belkin cable, the Belkin USB-C MagSafe cable, is terrible.
Yeah. What we're talking about there is when the MacBook came out, no MagSafe, right? And one of the reasons that I said that this was the case is at the time was because the MacBook is so light compared to the MacBook Pro. 4.5 pounds for the MacBook Pro, 2 pounds for the MacBook, is that the MagSafe would actually just drag it along. Wouldn't let go.
Yeah, and it does to some extent. It's just such a wacky cable. We haven't written the review on it yet. I'm not sure I'm going to, but it's bad.
Yeah.
This is not a good product. And they tried.
Well, what we're talking about here is that Belkin decided, hey, we'll come in and make our own version of MagSafe that we can use with the MacBook. And we discovered that it dragged it or didn't separate well or just otherwise was no good.
Or doesn't reconnect well or some combination of the three. And again, they tried. It's just, given the product, there's just not a good adjunct to it. And while the MacBook Pro is going to be a little bit heavier, that may change the equation somewhat. And again, we don't even know if this case is legit.
Yeah, true. But MagSafe is a very well-regarded technology, particularly for people with kids and cats. Because, sometimes you just unthinking people, you just lift up to take your Mac somewhere and then, the power cord was still attached. But I think that the locking in of the USB-C is a standard. It's going to be a standard across the board. You better get over it. Maybe somebody else will invent a better fake MagSafe, but that's right now.
Yeah. For now, this is what we got.
Yeah, this is what we got. The usefulness of having a universal port standard across Macs and PCs, as time will hopefully reveal, may turn out to be a much better idea. We talked about this a little bit last week, but Mike, I'd like you to mention again for a second that even though the physical port form for USB-C is the same as Thunderbolt 3, you need different cables.
Yes and no. We touched on this a little bit before. I'd mentioned this, that USB-C 3.1 is contained in Thunderbolt 3.
Right.
And that is the case. If you plug in a USB-C 3.1 device into a Thunderbolt 3 port, it functions just like USB-C does, in the same way that the mini DisplayPort works in a Thunderbolt port. But it's not the other way around. If you plug in a Thunderbolt 3 cable into a USB-C 3.1 port, then the Thunderbolt device is not going to function.
Right.
Maybe Apple's worked out something saying, hey, doofus, you just plugged in a Thunderbolt device into USB-C port. Try again.
Right.
Your Thunderbolt ports are right here. But again, this
is not going to be much of an issue for consumers because consumers are hardly going to be aware that Thunderbolt exists, I think. 10 gigabit per second, which is the speed of full USB-C 3.1, is fast.
It's Thunderbolt 1 speeds, yeah.
Yeah.
Thunderbolt 2 is 20 and Thunderbolt 3 is 40.
40, I know. The pros are going to go bananas, but I think typical consumers, they're still, I'm not saying this like you're rubes or anything, I'm still finding USB 3 to be very quick. And USB 3 is 5 gigabits per second.
USB 3 with UASP is what we had with FireWire.
Right.
It's very, very fast data transfers as opposed to a lot of interjected wait states where the USB is listening to figure out what's going on.
Right.
Grossly oversimplified. But yeah, USB 3 is the vast majority of what everybody needs right now. And frankly, unless you have the larger iPad Pro, you're still transferring data across the Lightning cable at USB 2 speeds.
Yeah, right. Again, I think this will, ironically, even as it unifies the port form, I think it will further separate out Thunderbolt as a Pro-only protocol.
Well, another issue with the Pro-only protocol is the Thunderbolt 1 and 2 devices are going to need an adapter.
Yeah, right.
Because the port form is physically not the same.
Physically not the same, that's right. But this opens up the opportunity for USB-C to become ubiquitous in the way that USB did. So I think that most consumers will just be getting their USB-C stuff and plugging it in, and it'll be super fast and everybody will be happy.
The Computex had a load of USB-C 3.1 and Thunderbolt 3 stuff.
Yeah.
So
with both Apple and Intel all the way behind this thing, Here we go.
FireWire was adopted by the digital video people for just exactly what I said, the streaming data transfer as opposed to the interrupted wait states.
Right.
But it never really caught on with the mainline public. It was iLink or FireWire, or there were
1394.
There are 5 different trade names for it.
Yeah.
Thunderbolt, we'll see. I mean, I'm going to leave it at that. We'll see.
Of course, everybody loves more. More. I need more. I need more speed. And yeah, 40 gigabits per second is amazing. But there's just not a lot of practical application for it unless you are dealing with very high resolution media. Most people aren't. So
we can go way back in this. We can say that, well, this serial port is great, but this SCSI port is fantastic, but has limited application for high speed data transfer.
Right.
There's always been some combination of ports where we've had to do that.
And some sort of compromise. SCSI had a limit of 7 devices, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, well...
I know, that's a whole nother wrinkle.
It did and it didn't. And SCSI 2, I think, was 25. But just the same, then there was termination and active termination and passive termination and so on and so forth.
Passive-aggressive termination.
I guess I'll go with that.
That's how I'm getting fired.
But we will see... I'm not sold that the case that we've seen is for the MacBook Pro.
Exactly. This is the problem with part leaks, is that most of them these days are mock-ups, 3D printing renders, and just somebody has spewed out a set of specs and somebody goes, hey, I can make a phone case that meets those specs. Here you go.
Once upon a time, you could say, well, that's brushed aluminum, that's Apple's, but you can't say that anymore.
No, yeah. Again, a lot of PC makers have already been painting their stuff to look like metal when in fact it isn't, for weight purposes and all that sort of stuff.
The first thing I did when we saw that case is try and see if there was a Chromebook or something that had that notch up above the keyboard. We'll see how that goes.
Now, having said that, there is one rumor about this that I absolutely love and would love to see happen, that OLED strip of touchscreen material that replaces the function key. I love this idea.
Yeah, I love the concept, but I would like it to not be limited to Apple crap only. I would like it to be something that I can say, okay, well, the left inch of this, I want this to be this, and the next inch of this, I want it to be this, and the next inch of it, I want it to scroll through my photos and give me little strips of my photos. But I don't know if we're going to get that flexibility, or even if it's something we're going to have.
Well, true. The picture that we ran on it in Rumor Roundups on Friday was with it sitting next to an iPhone 7 Plus with dual cameras. So this is the thing, I mentioned it in the column, but these high-tech computer renders of things that don't exist throw me off. Don't make me a picture of something that looks like it's sitting on a picnic table when it doesn't in fact exist. That's cool for movies, but not for real life. I don't like it.
Well, are you new to this job?
Hey, okay. Give me those blurry factory photos. That's what I'm waiting for. That's when it's real to me. Could you take your beautiful, perfect computer render and fuzz it up a little? Put some Vaseline on the lens like they did on Star Trek. Yeah.
A little bit of film grain. Yeah.
I do like the idea of an OLED strip as a contextual bar that changes as with the application. You're right, Mike, that power users probably won't get as much control as we'd like on that. And of course, I'm talking about it like it's a real thing. It may not be, but it's an intriguing idea. As I say, when I look at the renders of this future MacBook Pro, I see nothing but, ooh, where's my credit card? I like it. The new hinge, the 4 USB-C ports, I'm ready. There will be, of course, a lot of from crowd that goes, the knights who say knee.
Well, here's the deal. If you have any of the Retina MacBook Pros dating back from the 2012, which is what we're recording this podcast on right now, you're going to be within a relatively slim sliver of performance between the machines just because of how Intel has gone. For me, it would have to be a fairly compelling reason to upgrade, and I'm just not seeing it. The USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 proliferation isn't as deep as I need it to be before I jump into something like that just yet.
That's the other thing. Of course, Apple is embracing a technology that is still emerging, you might say. I mean, there's the Chromebook and there's the MacBook. These have been consumer products. Maybe there's a PC out there that's very, very pro-oriented and has USB-C. I haven't seen that yet, but that's just, I haven't looked.
Well, yeah, you have a sheltered existence now that we're not doing quite so much on the other side of the fence.
I know. Oh, Electronista, we still miss you. Anyway, the other thing, though, that I find kind of intriguing was another rumor that came out just on Friday after we'd published a whole set of rumors on Thursday. The problem was we said that, this will be the last one before the show. Wrong. Anyway, here's another one that I like, is a rumor that Apple would bring the iMessage technology and iMessage messages program to Android, trying to unify everybody, trying to steal WhatsApp's thunder, trying to create a platform that everybody can text on and message each other universally. Again, another foray into Android. Not their first, but a rare foray into Android.
I think it's probable, and I think it's going to be limited to newer versions of Android. I don't think it's going to be one of those things that goes back to gingerbread or anything like that.
Oh, no. Heck, Android can't keep up with all the Android versions.
I think it's probably Android 5 and above. I think that's probably what we're going to be limited to. So I don't think you have to worry about getting spammed by somebody on their $25 Walmart tablet.
Oh, God, I hope not. Oh, my goodness. But it's an intriguing idea, and I kind of like it because
I'm perfectly fine with it.
This is the silliest reason ever, but I just hate it when people text bubbles come to me in green. Oh, it's the ugliest green.
Well, if Slack can do it and Skype can do it and WhatsApp can do it, then Apple can do it with iMessage.
It's time. Yeah, I think it's time. This is an idea that the rumor is sketchy because it came from a sketchy source and because it's so last minute. But I'm down with officially saying I would love to see that happen. I would love to get my Android using relatives and friends to show me iMessage bubbles. There's two reasons for this. Number one, I've mentioned before, the thing about iMessage is not just that it's a nice messaging program. There are other ones that do maybe even more or are fancier, but this one works worldwide, kind of like WhatsApp. But the problem with WhatsApp is everybody needs to be on WhatsApp. With iMessage, it's just built into your device, or in the case of Android, you can add it to your device, and now you can talk cross-border free. It can even handle, if they include FaceTime in the mix, you can even handle video and audio. So that would be, first of all, that would be a huge thing. Second is, it would effectively kill off SMS. Or might over time.
It would depend on the Android adoption.
Well, that's the other problem. And this is the only reason that I have my doubts about this otherwise wonderful idea. Apple has made forays into Android before, as I said, particularly with the Apple Music application and with an app that helps you switch from Android to iOS. And that is their idea. Mm-hmm. We will give the Android people, it's not the you are my enemy and we will fight to the death attitude anymore. It's more of a we'll give you iOS stuff on your Android if it helps bring you to iOS. Giving them messages, I don't think we'll do that. I don't see how it will do that other than, wow, I'm impressed with this. I'm going to buy an iPhone.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think there's enough motivation on Apple's side to do it. It would just be, one of those things where having the convenience of everybody being on the same page would be great. And here's the thing. I mentioned this in the article, but I got to mention it again. We all hear about militant Android users who are like, I hate Apple and everything they stand for, even though all the technology I use in my Android is taken from them. No Apple. I don't want Apple stuff. Okay, and this is my alternative. I'm being a rebel here. Okay, fine. More people in the world are on Android than not. Fair enough, but the truth of the matter is that most Android users are just Android users because that's what the salesman sold them, because that was the cheapest phone, because that was the one that had the camera the way they liked it, in the center or whatever it is, whatever it was, the color they wanted, whatever it was. They just picked Android without malice. They just picked it, and that's fine.
You want to be a rebel, use Windows Phone.
Yeah, really. And quick while it lasts. Oh, anyway. But if your family talks to each other on their iOS devices all the time and you're the Android black sheep here, you'll get messages. You'll get it because you want to be on the channel everybody else is on. So peer pressure, particularly in the United States, will do a lot, I think, for that. But again, I don't think it'll convince people to switch. And that is what Apple is really interested in. The other thing, we've talked a little bit about things that will make old-time Mac users pull their hair out, like USB-C and having to buy all new cables. Oh, fun. This rumor going around, and it seems like it may very well happen, that Apple is about to rename OS X back to some variation of Mac OS. You'd think that would please this crowd, but you'd be wrong. Because, of course, Apple can never do it exactly the way they want it. We've had a few leaks showing Mac OS written as either capital M Mac OS, no spaces, or small m Mac OS, no spaces, to keep in line with watchOS, tvOS, and iOS.
Oh, I saw another one today. I saw lowercase Mac OS with 12 after.
Yeah, and this is what I think will happen. I don't know if you saw it in my column or not, but this is what I think will happen, is that the problem here is actually that this name change has been due for a while. We have had OS 10 as a name since 2001. Well, 2000 for some of us. Yeah.
Oh, earlier than that.
So it's been around a long time for some of us. And it just sounds like we're stuck there. OS 10. Well, this is OS 10. Well, another decade goes by and it's still OS 10. Even Steve Jobs himself said that when OS 10 first commercially came out, he said, I think we could probably get a whole decade out of this name. Well, we did. And then some.
From 1990 to 2000, we went through 7, 7.1, 7.5, 7.6, 8.0, 8.1, 8.5, 8.6, 9.0, 9.1, 9.2.
Right. That's as far as it goes.
So that's 3 entirely different integers. Let's see, 9 significant versions.
Yeah.
I'm not even counting the point upgrades there.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't quite see the same from 2000 to 2010. We've only seen the real acceleration on that in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no, I'm not married to the OS 10 name any more than I was to Mac OS 9 or OS 8.
And it is perfect. Again, it is perfectly like Apple that now finally everybody understands that X is a Roman numeral and it's supposed to be pronounced OS 10 and not sex.
Oh, sex. Oh, boy.
Now that people know that, finally, let's change it. But this, I think, is a back to the future moment where it plays out and makes sense. Of course, it will line up with the other platform names. But also, I personally find a lot of comfort in calling it, instead of Mac OS 10, 10.12, I don't know, Big Sur, or whatever California place name they're going to use. They just call it Mac OS 12. Get used to it. I like it.
I don't think so. I think it's Mac OS and Mac OS 2 and Mac OS 3 and Mac OS 4.
Really?
I think that they're going to reset. Yep. I think they're going to reset the number.
I think they're going to keep the California place names, but it's not going to be on the box or anything. Oh, that's right. They don't have boxes anymore. Jesus, I'm old. Oh, remember, I stood in line outside of an Apple store. That's
not entirely true, because you can buy Snow Leopard from them and you'll get it in a box.
Nostalgia. The macOS thing doesn't bother me, but it will. This is shaping up to be, at least if you believe the rumor mill, this is shaping up to be a very, very major Worldwide Developers Conference. We are also talking about big changes at the App Store, which we already know about. Phil Schiller came out and said, I'm telling you this now because it's not going to make it into the keynote and it's so huge, which makes you wonder what else they've got up their sleeve.
Well, let me just speak on that briefly. What we have for the changes to the App Store is an interview. We don't have frequently asked questions. We don't have the official Apple policy document. We don't have any of that.
Right.
So the Twitter conversations and all the blog posts and everything about freaking out about how this doesn't help the developers, it just helps Apple. Well, number one, yeah.
Yeah.
Because why would they do something that's going to hurt them? Number two, we don't know exactly how this is all going to shake out. I'm not thrilled about paid ads in search results. Not excited about that. I don't think that's going to help discovery in any way.
Well, it depends on how they implement it, but as described, I agree.
But no one said recently that the App Store will help you with discovery. You are on your own to get your stuff discovered.
Yeah, always have been.
So I'm not a developer. That's not how I'm making my money. And I understand that can be a pain, but we managed to sell software before the Mac App Store was a thing.
Yeah. And this is the thing, I compare the App Store to television in terms of advertising. There's 1.5 million products advertised on TV. None of them get any particular favor except those that can buy every commercial slot.
Right.
So to me, this is how the app market works. You've got to be able to distinguish your app in some other way. Word of mouth plays a huge role, but there's plenty of other things that you can do within and without the App Store to draw attention to your stuff.
Send us an email. Send Touch Arcade an email and iMore and 9 to 5 and Apple Insider. And somebody might say, yeah, go ahead, send me a code and we'll have our review people look at it.
Yeah.
And maybe they won't, but there are other venues to get this done.
Yeah. And that is just one of them as well. You'd be surprised how few developers, although it is a large number to us, those of us who have to sift through our email, you'd be surprised how many haven't sent us regular press releases on their stuff. It's kind of remarkable.
I mean, obviously we can't get to everybody, but
no.
If you say, hey, please review my app and it doesn't look like utter, hammered garbage, then I'm going to give it to William or I'm going to give it to Amber.
Yeah.
And they're going to take a look at it.
Exactly. So there's quite a few new things coming down the pike, apparently. Maps is supposed to get a big update. Siri coming to the Mac. I think it will. I think it's time. The iTunes Store rumored to get a big overhaul. And so, I mean, name an area where a lot of users have said, hey, Apple should do some more stuff here. And it looks like they're going to. On top of that, there's that little thing of new versions of iOS. And this is sort of what prompted the whole macOS thing, actually, is the next version of iOS, if they stick to their naming convention, should be iOS 10. And you just can't have macOS 10 and iOS 10 at the same time because people will think it's the same release. And it isn't. Despite the worry warders predicting that it would all merge into one thing, it hasn't.
It will.
Maybe, but it's going to take a long time. It's certainly not happening on Monday.
4 years.
4 years?
It's going to take 4 years. I think in the next 4 years, we now have one operating system.
So you're saying that President Trump will force Apple to merge these two?
That is exactly not what I'm saying. But it's inevitable. The iPad Pro has faster performance and faster graphical performance than the MacBook does.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper.
Yeah. Not by much, but yes, it is in fact cheaper.
There's no compelling reason that if Apple wanted to put Mac OS or OS 10 or Mac OS 12 or whatever on the iPad, that they couldn't do it tomorrow. In the same way that they had OS 10 running on Intel chipsets long before they ever made the shift.
This is very true. And if Apple ever just goes ahead and says, look, we're putting an A12 or whatever year that they actually do this, we're going to put an A chip into our lower end consumer products because they've now caught up. And at the rate they're going, they're catching up fast.
And there will be a Rosetta-like layer until there won't be anymore.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen.
Well,
until Intel or whoever can pull their heads out of their butts or the laws of physics get changed or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how this is going to go.
Well, we'll see. I still think that there's enough interface separation that this will take a while. I just don't ever see myself touching my Mac screen on purpose.
Have you used split screen on an iPad Pro?
No, I don't have an iPad Pro. See, that's the problem.
Just wait and see.
Okay. Believe me, I'm taking you guys' word for it. I agree. Mike, what do you think is going to happen to the MacBook Air? Let's just talk about the whole MacBook family. So where do you think we'll be?
I have a suspicion that maybe not at the WWDC, but not long afterward, that I think we're going to see some pretty aggressive price points on the Mac Mini and the MacBook Air. I think that the $499 Mac Mini will probably stay where it is. I think that the rest of the line will get compressed. I think the MacBook Air will start at either $699 or $799.
Wow, really?
I don't think it's going to get Retina. I don't think it's going to get USB-C, but I also don't think the MacBook Air is long for this world.
Yeah, right.
I think we have maybe one more upgrade to it, maybe two, and that's it. But again, this isn't something where they're talking about like the Performa days where they were lamenting we have so many SKUs, and that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
We're still talking about Mac Mini, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro. Again, you'll note I didn't say Mac Pro.
Nope, you didn't.
So, and the iMac, of course.
Yes, the iMac will stick around.
The iMac will be that high-performing machine because for 90% of the uses, the i7 Retina iMac is a superior machine to the Mac Pro.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I believe. This is why I keep saying that they either have to make a completely revamped Mac Pro or kill it off, because the 5K iMac, throw in USB-C and Thunderbolt 3, and you're done. You have a Mac Pro. You have a better than Mac Pro. So, yeah, I think that's the way to go. That's probably why we haven't seen an independent Thunderbolt display either and aren't going to, it looks like. Speaking of things that not gonna happen.
No, this one makes me mad. Go ahead.
We had yet another. I love it when rumors come back and say, oh, yeah, we are in fact going to do this. Yeah. There was another report late last week that said that, yeah, Apple is going to kill off downloads, sales of downloaded songs. They're going to kill that off. In fact, when we said it 6 months ago, it was going to be within 2 years. We're sticking to that.
It's going to happen, but it's not going to be in 2 years.
Oh, you think it's going to happen?
I think it's going to be one of those things like, well, if you bought it, you can still download it, but we're not going to sell you any more individual tracks. And I think if Apple had their way, they would be just streaming now, but I don't think it's up to Apple.
Well, that's certainly true. And to me, music is tied to fashion very much in the way we consume it and what's popular and all that sort of stuff. So for me, at least, there's no chance. I have to disagree disagree. I don't think there's any chance in the foreseeable future that Apple will stop selling music downloads. It will become less of an emphasis. But just like the Apple Store still sells box software, I think that they'll continue to sell digital files. I think people do like having, I know it's hard to talk about this, but a physical file that you can hold. Wait, you can't hold it.
And I have no issue with that. That's one of the reasons. I'm going to jump genres a little bit here, but the original Xbox One announcement had this huge vision of this all digital future where, yeah, you could buy a game on a disc, but after you loaded on your Xbox One, that game was forever yours.
Right.
And you could loan it, and you could do all these cool things with it digitally. But the people said, well, what about secondhand software? Oh my God, you're going to kill this market. And Microsoft said, well, okay, we're not going to do that then. But I'd be perfectly fine with that. The Xbox's vision of the future, Microsoft's vision of the future, I'd have been perfectly fine with that. And I have no problem with the Mac App Store. Let me give you an example. While working up for this old Mac Pro series.
Yes, which is going along gangbusters.
I said, do I have any bootable Lions anymore? And it turns out I didn't, because the Lion installer that I had, the certificate had expired on it.
Oh, right.
When Apple did the certificate shift in February, I want to say. But then, you know what? I just went to my purchase history and I just re-downloaded it.
Right.
And made a new boot disk with Disk Maker. That simple. It was that simple. And I have FiOS and I don't have data caps. So that, that's not 5 gig out of my 300 gig I get a month or anything like that.
Right.
But one of the reasons why I started my home server in 1999 is I was tired of stacks of CDs everywhere.
Right. I have to plead guilty on this. My father told me to invest in CDs in my future, and I totally misinterpreted what he meant.
Now you have jewel boxes all over the place. Is that what you got going on?
My total collection of CDs is well over 3,000.
Oh my God.
At this point. But they're not all here, because otherwise I'd have to have a second apartment.
That makes me itchy.
And I have a few hundred records still that I didn't sell off, and an enormous burgeoning collection of DVDs. I bought tons and tons of DVDs for the movies that I knew I would want to watch more than once. I am one of those guys. For cinephiles, for music files, there are at least some percentage of the content that is permanent part of their soul, and they want it around all the time. So the other thing that argues against your idea, but this is admittedly a fairly weak reason, but the economy ebbs and flows. And what generally happens when the economy goes south, as it inevitably will again someday, it's hardly on the Mason-Dixon line as it is. Once it goes further south, people cut expenses. And one of the things that they will cut first is subscriptions.
I don't think so.
When I first moved to Canada, I gave up cable TV because it was too expensive for what we needed to do. I got used to not having TV, and now I don't even want it back except for very, very select content.
I think that mind shift has shifted. I think that given the bundle prices that you have for internet and your mobile phone, I think that TV and Netflix and things like that are going to be considered vital unless you have absolutely no money, which is a different situation.
Yeah.
And I think that the Netflix and chill is sufficiently cheap that subscription gets kept.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think the whole Netflix idea presages cable, really. We've talked about this a little bit just recently, the subscription fatigue, because there are a million little things. Right? There's Netflix and Hulu. There's Microsoft. There's Adobe. There's just so many of these things. Software, media, just all adds up to a monthly bill that if you're not very careful about it, can get out of control compared to the all-you-can-eat services we used to have, like cable. I certainly think that in the near term, Apple would be foolish and would be just surrendering business.
Yeah, I didn't say, when I said they're going to do it, I didn't say it was going to be this year.
Yeah, I know.
But I don't see this taking a long time. I'm going to stick with my 4 years like I did with the OS 10 iOS. Within 4 years, they're going to say, we're not selling discrete tracks anymore. And why would you want to anyway? We have Apple Music for $10 a month. I think that's how that's going
If it's still $10 a month in 10 years, you may have a point there. The other thing that we talked about this before as well, but just very, very briefly, Apple thus far, although this looks like it may start changing, Apple thus far has not been big on subscription stuff, right? You can rent movies and now you can rent music, but it's most of their software, like Final Cut, is not subscription, right? Even their Pro Class.
I'm willing to bet that changes right here and right now.
Really? Yep. That's one of your predictions for Monday. Wow.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it may not be something that they roll out that day, but I think that allowing for subscription for software as a service through the Mac App Store,
right.
I think that is the change right there.
Well, to me, that was kind of responding to a trend, but it's the problem is that it's a trend that consumers are not fully on board with yet, as we saw with Text Expander.
Well, consumers weren't on board with no floppy drives either.
Nope. I know you sometimes have to lead people on to their nirvana that you're promising them.
Software as a service is here.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, software as a service is all around us.
Yeah, this is where things are going. And although Mike and I disagree on the rollout and the implementation, time will tell whether these things are fads that will eventually swing back the other way, like ownership of music, or if this is the new normal. One thing that Mike and I can agree on, though, I think I can say with some great confidence, even though I haven't chatted with him about it ahead of time, but I'm just going to spring it on him. No blue iPhone. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. Certainly not replacing charcoal gray.
Some of these rumors always have a fatal flaw. That was it. There is no chance of Apple replacing essentially black with blue. Adding blue?
Maybe, sure.
Sounds like an intriguing idea. I might love that, especially if it's a deep blue, but an azure, you might say.
Yeah.
And you have to say it like, just you can hear Johnny Ive pronouncing azure.
It's not even what I heard. I heard Mrs. Piggy's stylist saying it.
Like I said, Jonathan Ive. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble now. We're off the list.
We're not on the list.
I know we're struggling to get on the list, and then we keep shooting ourselves in the foot.
No, we're not. We don't even want to be on the list. I like our little hole in the wall we have.
That's true. Well, WWDC, in short, is shaping up to be very, very big. It just seems like Apple has got some stuff going on under the surface. It's not going to pay off right away. Tim Cook already came out and said we got something big coming down the pike in a while. We can't tell you about it much now, but all of that is going to feed back in.
The only guarantees I have is WWDC rolls around, the old-time users are going to be annoyed. Well, I'm not making a joke at anybody's expense here.
No.
This WWDC will continue to solidify, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, it will continue to solidify Apple's shift to a mobile company.
Yeah.
But it's not Apple saying, just kind of throwing caution to the wind saying, well, we're just going to do mobile now. That's what people are buying.
Yeah. Doesn't Apple have to go where sales are? Of course they do. Even if they helped create the, quote, problem, unquote. They were not the only player. They never are. Apple doesn't operate in a vacuum. And if consumers say, you know what, I take my stuff on the go. Increasingly, I take my stuff on the go. And increasingly, I want all the things, all the internet, all the music, all the video on demand when I want it, wherever I am. Well, then you have to respond to that. That's simple reality.
Another argument we're getting with this is, well, Apple could do both. And yeah, they could, but there's no compelling reason for them to do so.
Yeah.
Apple is still a company. They don't owe us anything.
Right.
And again, I want to reiterate that this doesn't necessarily make me happy. I mean, the Mac Pro series I'm having so much fun doing it. It's a ridiculous amount of work, and I have little dings and nicks and scrapes all over my hands from the metal cases and heat sinks and things.
I was going to ask you about your fingers.
It is not an Apple I'm ever going to have again. When this series is done, there's not another set of machines I'm going to be able to do this on in 5 more years. And you can say that, well, if Apple doesn't make what I need, I'm going to go somewhere else. Well, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm not saying don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out or anything like that, but look at the Surface and look at the Surface Book and look at what everybody is making.
Google's Chromebook, Microsoft's Surface, and Apple's mobile lineup, they're all going in the same direction. All the companies are going in the same direction. All right, moving on. So if our main story thus far has been speculative largely because all you guys will go, look at those idiots. They don't know what they're talking about because this will have all happened by the time you hear it. Here's one that has happened, and we know exactly what we're talking about, and that's a fellow website, I guess you could say, Gawker. Right? They're a news site, but that's probably where the resemblance to MacNN ends, or at least I hope so.
They're on the internet. That's the similarity right there.
There you go. Yes, they too are on the internet. For those of you who haven't heard the whole story, it goes back quite a ways and there's quite a bit of depth to it. But the short, quick version is that they have occasionally been irresponsible as journalists. And at one point, they managed to piss off somebody with enough money and time to pursue them in court till the end of time. And that person, well, it's not Hulk Hogan, but the guy financing Hulk Hogan, Peter Thiel, who's the billionaire. Hulk Hogan was the guy who Gawker irresponsibly ran a story about a sex tape and then tried to defend it as, well, sex tapes are public knowledge, or should be. Anyway, they lost that suit super bad. The jury came back with $140 million judgment against the company. Now, Gawker probably makes a lot more money than we do, to be frank, but they don't make that kind of money. And so because they also outed Mr. Thiel against his will, and that's what caused his rivalry. And he's been looking for ways to hurt them back ever since. And Hulk Hogan came along, and apparently some other lawsuits have come along, and he's like, I'll pay for your lawsuits. You just go get them. On Friday, we learned that Gawker has decided that they cannot win this fight, even if they were in the right. And of course, it's all rather muddier than that, but they can't win it. So they are filing for bankruptcy and are now up for sale. As a journalist, as somebody who has worked in journalism long before I was part of MacNN, and as somebody who has worked in all forms of journalism, TV, print, and web, I cannot even begin to tell you how mixed feeling I have about this. The chilling effect of having a super rich person sue you out of existence is incredibly troubling. This just is bothersome, not just because of any potential threat that we see on our site, but because of the general effect it has on the media. But did it have to be Gawker? They went looking for trouble and found it.
That was going to be my point here, is they decided that in the interest of advertising traffic
and clickbait,
that they were going to out Peter Thiel, and they also decided in the interest of advertising traffic, they were going to show excerpts from the Hulk Hogan sex tape.
And who wants to see that? But never mind. That's a different point.
I'm not even going to get into who wants to see that. That's an entirely separate issue. Apparently, Gawker is looking at suing Peter Thiel, and they don't have a leg to stand on. There's nothing.
They don't have a leg to stand on.
They're talking about torturous interference and all these other things, but there's nothing saying that you can't pay for somebody's lawyer.
Nope.
It's not like this guy kicked down the door Batman style and started slinging insults in the court or anything like that.
And Peter Thiel, hardly the first super rich person to volunteer to help sue other people out of existence. This was happening with the Rockefellers and the Carnegies over a century ago. This is not new.
The jury decided that they didn't like Gawker's attitude on the stand. And looking at the testimony and looking at what I've seen from it, they're right. The Gawker people were opinionated. They were, I can't believe I'm here. This is a load of crap.
Right.
But the thing is, they were there because they got sued.
Gawker's attitude was that any dirt we find on anybody is de facto news and we can run it. It doesn't matter whether it's appropriate. It doesn't matter whether it's a public, in this case, it's a public individual. But even if they found compelling enough dirt on a private individual, like Peter Thiel, they can put it out there. And by virtue of it being dirt, it's news. That's not what they teach you in journalism school.
There is a difference, right? There's a difference between journalism and mudslinging.
Yeah. There's a difference in using your paper to expose uncomfortable truths and just wanting to hurt somebody because they did something stupid.
I do not understand how the Hulk Hogan tape was newsworthy.
No, it's certainly not.
I don't really see the point other than, hey, we're going to...
He's a minor celebrity. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, well, not, even celebrity news I don't get, but that's a separate issue. The paparazzi I don't understand. I don't understand public shaming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on here. Thiel didn't want the world to know in the early part of the 21st century that he was gay.
Right.
But yet Gawker decided, well, we're going to talk about it anyway. How is that appropriate? How is that appropriate for them to decide that they're the ones who needed to do that? Yeah, I'm not thrilled about a billionaire deciding that he's going to visit God's own thunder with lawyers.
Well, and I worry about that effect because hothead billionaires are on the rise of late.
Well, what I'm going to say in that is it's no different. There are no checks and balances against hothead billionaires, but in this case, I don't think there should be.
Well, there's certainly not under a capitalistic market. You can spend your money on what you want to spend your money on.
Right. And that's how would the system go if we said you can have the best lawyer that you can afford, but if anyone gives you money for a lawyer, you can't take it.
Yeah.
Or you can get a lawyer, but no, don't get a loan to do it.
Right.
Or anything like that. This just doesn't make any sense.
No. And you're interfering with people's ability to...
It's been said that your court case depends less on the quality of your lawyer and more on the quality of your lawyer's Rolodex.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the case here and maybe it isn't. But Thiel did everything right. Gawker did what they thought was right. And the jury decided that Gawker was wrong.
Yeah. I'm not going to advise Gawker, but I'm telling them, if you're trying to appeal, forget it. You might get 100 million judgment instead of 140.
Yeah, I honestly, I think they just need to let this one. I think they need to do what they need to do to survive, and that's sad.
Well, I don't think they're going to survive.
Well, no, they are. They're going to get bought. They're either going to win an appeal, and I don't think they are, or they're going to restructure everything under bankruptcy, and then they're going to get bought by Ziff Davis.
Yeah, but Thiel is still. I mean, as long as Thiel is going to keep going after them, I don't know. I don't predict a future for them.
Well, then they need to watch the P's and Q's. They need to act responsibly.
Yeah, that would be a major change. That's really all I should say about that.
Well, they're not going to have much of a choice.
Yeah.
They're going to be under a new corporate head. They're going to lose a lot of people regardless. If Ziff Davis buys them, there's going to be a lot of redundancy between existing Ziff Davis properties and the Gawker
I wonder
properties.
if the Ziff Davis bid is actually just a stalking floor, designed to set the value of the company, but not they don't actually want it.
I don't know. I mean, Gawker is well trafficked.
But the problem is that there's two lessons here. One is that yet another reminder is if we needed more, that capitalism has a downside, and that is that hothead billionaires can do what they want, even if they're in the wrong. And that's...
I don't think he is. I don't think he's in the wrong.
That's the problem, is he's not in the wrong here. I know. His original beef was very in the right. How he's gone about extracting his revenge bothers me for the chilling effect that it has that he probably didn't intend. He just had Gawker in his sights and just wanted to get rid of them or hurt them. But unfortunately, all of these actions have larger implications. Gawker's irresponsible actions have larger implications. Peter Thiel's actions have larger implications. I'm just hoping that there are no old Mac Pro owners who are billionaires who find fault with something in this old Mac Pro series.
We get in our email box, we get tips and hints and heads ups and quote unquote insider knowledge all the time. Mm-hmm. We had a story 4 years ago where the Department of Defense was going to stop doing research on BlackBerry hardware.
Yep.
Stop me if you've heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to buy all Android and iOS hardware, and a lot of it. And we ran the story because we had it right. Yep. We weren't maligning anybody. We weren't giving anyone a hard time.
We checked around. We confirmed the source. We did all the good old-fashioned journalism footwork that one is supposed to do.
And it took 2 years to prove us right. It took data from the Department of Defense coming out 2 years later to say that, oh, yeah, these guys were right. But the mails we got and the hate we got and, oh, my God, you're trying to manipulate BlackBerry stock price. You're trying to do all these things was terrible.
Yeah. The BlackBerry people were not happy with it.
But the thing is we did due diligence on it, and this isn't something that was going to hurt anybody. It didn't accelerate BlackBerry's descent into madness.
Right.
But if we ran everything we got in our email box, and we'd be target of all these lawsuits too.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to sound like an old man dispensing advice, but here I go. Ready? You need a grown-up on your site, somebody in charge. You need that.
You do need someone in charge, but you also need to not be looking solely at the hit count.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is the big other lesson here, along with not everybody's dirt is news.
You have a certain responsibility to use it properly.
And there's quite a few sites and at least one major network, maybe four, that could stand to be reminded of this. And we may see some more of these sorts of vindictive lawsuits to hammer that point home. We'll see. A bit of surprise news, I guess. This is one of those occasions where MacNN's got a position on an issue and everybody else seems to be elsewhere on it. But I'm just going to throw it out there. Apple has filed paperwork to become an energy producing company. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to give up making computers, as some sites seem to think. Apple already produces, it's one of the largest producers of solar and alternative energy in the United States right now. Not the biggest.
Not even close.
Not even close, but a big one. And will probably get bigger going forward, sure. And their solar farms and other alternative things have worked out very well for them. It's cut costs on their server centers dramatically. But it also generates a bit more power than they actually need. And so, like anybody else who owns a solar farm, you incorporate a shell company and you file to be able to sell that excess power back to the grid, because that's actually what the law requires. You can't just stick a windmill on your farm, at least in many states you can't do this. Stick a windmill on your farm, generate more power than you need, and force the power company to buy the rest from you. In some states, they have that law set up, but most of them have gotten rid of those now, because too many people were taking them up on the offer. And so as we emerge into a more and more green power, alternative-led power generation economy, we're going to see more and more of this, right? Everybody's got wind. Everybody's got sun. You, me, and everybody in Florida could be an energy company. It's just a tax filing. On top of that, Apple is notoriously savvy for doing this sort of thing, copywriting terms for services or variations on the Mac that they never think that they're going to actually do, just to make sure that they have that leverage and take advantage of any tax benefits or incentives that they can get for it.
Yeah, that's what this is about. This isn't about a shift in focus. This is about maximum leverage of tax credits.
Right. They're like, hey, we're producing a lot of power. We probably produce more in the future. We should probably file paperwork to make sure that we can sell that. It'll just offset our costs. Yep. That's it. I do not think that 5 or 10 years from now, or for that matter, 25 years from now, I'll be paying Apple Power Incorporated for my electric bill. This isn't going to happen. Will they continue to grow as a power producer? Well, yes. Have they already started putting up solar farms in other countries where the land is a lot cheaper and using that technology for the benefit of both that economy and their macro economy? Yes. Yeah. Are they going to become the new GE, as some sites have actually said? No. For a start, GE is a military contractor. That isn't happening.
Yeah, well, GE is like Samsung. GE has more in common with Samsung than Apple has in common with GE.
They really do. That's very good, very apt.
GE is got its fingers in everything. They're a Department of Defense contractor. They make appliances. They do consumer goods. They do all kinds of things. And again, this is not about Apple's diversification into other industries so much as it is for the taxes.
Yeah, taxes, incentives, and just so that they can keep their leverage at maximum, right? If they want to set up a solar farm in the Midwest, they now have the paperwork that will let them pursue that deal. You know, if land prices in the Midwest got to be reasonable or they just decided they needed it, fine. So you can expect to see paperwork like this filed in, I don't know, Canada, China, other places like that.
I would assume so, yeah.
So I think this is much ado about very little. I applaud Apple's efforts to power themselves in as eco-friendly a manner as possible. But is this a new business for them? Even if they make a fair amount selling their power back, that I still don't think this is, we're in the wrong business. Screw these computers. I don't think that's no.
It was noteworthy that Apple did this, but the tempest in the teapot is the same as when the USPTO rules to invalidate a patent. Oh my God, the USPTO has invalidated this patent, so that means everything is permanently null and void. No. It means we have 3 more years of going through the process. Yeah. And that's what this is part of. This is, we're going to do this now so we don't have to do this 2 years down the road when you're right, when they want to put a huge 500 megawatt solar farm in the middle of Kansas.
Yeah. Essentially, we're like, don't get your panties in a wad, is what we're saying here.
This isn't, while noteworthy and interesting, it's not a harbinger of anything.
As part of, I guess, the larger picture of, Apple is diversifying further and further out into other areas, including computers at their core and technology at their core, but they're using that technology to advance out into things like cars and now into solar and all that sort of stuff. Great. Tesla makes cars, and that's what everybody knows them for. You know what? They also make a home battery storage system. Yep. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Elon Musk lays awake at night thinking of new uses for not just the technology he has, but the technology he's going to have. Sure. That's how you do it. You skate to where the puck is going to be. Speaking of which, R.I.P. Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey. One thing I'd like to call your attention to real quick is a series that we've run in the last week, a 3-part pointers special, you might say. It's just really just a themed set of pointers about security best practices. Now, we really want you to take a look at this because even those of you out there who think you are doing things fairly securely, good for you, and you probably are, but we'll wager that there's something in these 3 pointers columns that we wrote for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday last week that you'll go, I should look into that. Like VPNs, for example, for those of you who aren't already using them. There's different needs for different people. People who work entirely from home, people who work entirely from Starbucks, people who work entirely from every Starbucks on the planet because they're just constantly in motion, all have different needs. And we've tried to cover as many of these best practices as we can in this 3-part series. Mac users for a long time have had, I wouldn't say a complacency. I think that's a media creation that's not really true, but they're less vigilant than Windows users have had to be by the nature of Windows. And yet there are an ever increasing number of vectors of potential attacks, many of which are outside Apple's control. Apple does what it can, but they can't, as I mentioned in the column, they can never overcome human stupidity. And if you don't think about this stuff much, you become stupid on it. I've watched people join fake networks at airports and probably get their identity stolen because the word free was more important to them than the name of the legitimate airport network that was right above it. People can be amazingly dumb. Even smart people can be amazingly dumb.
We are also going to put this as a free publication on the iBook store and on Scribd. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you can hand to people that may not be as aware as you are about the security situation on iOS and OS X, and just some general practices.
Yeah.
So it's not enough that you are a good internet neighbor. Let's make sure that your neighbors are also good internet neighbors.
And this is the thing, right? Our readers tend to be veteran users, tend to be pretty savvy, college educated, handsome, rich, all that good stuff. But I guarantee you that most of the people listening to this podcast and most of our readers have at one time or another had to deal with a client or a relative, mostly relatives, that just blunder in where angels fear to tread, to borrow a phrase. A handout like this, a PDF like this that details not just what the security best practices are, but why you need to be doing this, even on a Mac, I think is going to do a lot of end good and save you talking yourself blue in the face. The columns are available now. We'll let you know when the PDF publication is on Scribd and on iBook Store. In the meantime, stay safe, kids. And as usual, we're going to round it up with good old William Gallagher and the good old app of the week. I can't wait to find out what good old app he loves this week.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because I made him do a lot of extra crap this week.
Oh, yeah. I want to quickly mention that if you missed it for some reason, you got to go back and look. Mike made William wear a non-Apple smartwatch for a week, and he didn't make it. He couldn't even stand it for a week. We don't want to give away too many specifics, but if you want to see what we're like when we don't like something, you need to read that article. Oh, it's so good. Red meat. Anyway, what is your app of the week?
Do you know, you don't even need me today. You could just wind back to the last episode, because for the first time ever, this is the same app of the week for 2 weeks running. So actually, really, isn't that? It's app of the fortnight. Who knows? It could even become app of the month, though that might be pushing it. There is one gigantic difference between this week and last. Last week, it was Workflow 1.5. This week, the app I'm addicted to is Workflow 1.5.1. A world of difference. Except, yeah, there is. Workflow is this automation app for iPhones and iPads. It connects together other apps and bits of iOS 9 to do things that are repetitive or tedious or just somehow awkward enough that you don't get around to doing them. It does get around to doing them. It does them fast. It does them whenever you tell it to. You've just got to tell it what to do. You can get Workflow to, ask you for the name of an event, and it'll pop whatever you say into your calendar. Now, of course, you could do that yourself, but with Workflow, you can make it so that adding an appointment is just a matter of swiping down on your iPhone, tapping a button, and typing the thing. Workflow does the rest of popping it into the right places for you. Or do what I do. I swipe down, I tap on a Workflow icon, I type in the name of an app because it asks me, and then Workflow goes to the App Store, finds the app, gets its price, gets a link to it, gets what that app's minimum iOS or OS X requirements are, then it writes a paragraph using all of that information in the right places, copies that paragraph to my clipboard, and finally goes and gets the app's icon artwork before airdropping it over to my Mac. Love this thing. I said last time that the thing that will make you addicted to Workflow is when this little app adds a new type of thing you can do. Last week, it added this business of being able to get information from the App Store, amongst other things, and that was a light switch for me. This week sees no change to how Workflow works. It has no change to how you use Workflow, and it only adds one single new thing that it can do, but it's big. Workflow on your iPhone or iPad can now work with If This Then That, ifttt.com. That's the free service that you can use for controlling the lights in your home, I suppose, or as I do, just simply automatically saving favorite tweets to an Evernote note. ifttt.com has hundreds of actions gathered into recipes for doing all sorts of things online. And if I sound a bit vague there, just saying all sorts of things, it's because I'm still the kid in the sweet shop stage. That's me. I'm a kid there, looking around at all I could possibly do, everything we could possibly have, whatever we could try. I just haven't done it yet. This is why Workflow will be an app I continue to be addicted to next week. Though, between us, I am actually capable of being addicted to more than one. Mind you, I'm only saying that in case Charles Martin wonders why he gets me on repeating the same thing every time. I'll repeat this though. Go buy Workflow. It's still on launch offer of 40% off, which makes it a whole $3. And ifttt.com, that's free. Utter bargains.
Well, that about wraps it up for episode 66 of the MacNN podcast. We are so pleased that you joined us. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that it was entertaining and quick, and you didn't need that hour anyway. You know what's going to happen next week? Episode 67. You know why? Because there will be so much more news. Oh, God. And reactions. Oh, no.
Yeah, next week is where the rubber hits the road. This is one of our biggest weeks of the year.
This is going to fuel us right the way through the summer and into the fall. So, for gosh sakes, stay tuned, because more is coming. I'm Charles Martin. I'm the editor of MacNN. On behalf of the entire staff, thank you so much for reading our site. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Managing editor Mike over there in Virginia says good night.
Good night, Mike says from Virginia.
And until next week, thanks, everybody. Good night.
Goodbye.